In a 2019 interview with Bayley and FS1 host Kristen Leahy, the topic of how wrestlers travel was brought up. As we know, that's all on the performer to sort, and when the Fair Game presenter heard this, she was flabbergasted. How on earth was a company the size of WWE not responsible for sorting cars or buses for their kind of employees to ride in? Bayley laughed it off, but this is by no means new. Non-wrestling fans are still perplexed by many aspects of the wrestling business. It's always amazing to see how those not affiliated with the industry react to the weird side of wrestling, even though long-time fans have just accepted that's how things are, for better or worse. It probably underlines why it's so important these things change, but how or when that happens is anybody's guess, but my word, when you take a step back, can wrestling sound bizarre? I'm Simon from What Culture. Remember to hit that subscribe button. This is 8 things non-wrestling fans don't believe about wrestling. Number 8, blading. I'm not surprised non-fans can't get their head around this, because I'm not entirely sure I have either. I do remember finding out and being shocked to my core, which sums it up. It's even weirder in 2019 given how WWE treats it. Look what they did 3 years ago when they decided that Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton needed some blood, so just let the beast bust open the Viper for real. What was this? The reason it was done is because accidental bleeding was deemed far more palatable for a mainstream audience than the alternative, which of course is taking a razor blade and sticking it into your own forehead. If it sounds barbaric, it's because it is on some level. It's making yourself bleed for the sake of your art, and let's face it, when it goes wrong, aka Eddie Guerrero and JBL, I'm not sure anyone can justify it. Even Mickey Rourke thought he was being wound up on the set of The Wrestler when director Darren Aronofsky asked him to do it for the movie, and it took weeks of convincing. But yes, if you have stumbled across this list and you do consider yourself a non-wrestling fan, back in the past and still sometimes in the present, wrestlers will indeed cut their foreheads open themselves to make it look like they've been beaten up. Do with that information what you will. I'm pretty sure you'll be horrified by it. Number 7, the unpaid travel. If you thought there was some rhyme or reason for a wrestler's travel made easier thanks to WWE, you're not alone. I think we all did at some point, especially when we were young. You just assumed there was some kind of magic carpet that WWE put on for their wrestlers after each and every show. They don't, and magic carpets aren't real. Going back to the start of the video, it was this revelation that stunned Kristen Leahy, and she almost fell off her chair when it was revealed that wrestlers also have to pay for it all. And of course it counts as a business expense, which means they can write it off for their taxes, but I guarantee you all wrestlers would rather they didn't have to deal with that. Trying to sort your taxes out sucks. WWE would also likely claim the whole independent contractor thing and how it brings their talent closer together, but that doesn't mean it's not a huge surprise when the average Joe finds this out. It just doesn't make any sense when you have a company as big as World Wrestling Entertainment. There is a small chance this changes in the future, especially if a company like AEW decides to help out, but for now, if you do want to be a professional wrestler, you better get used to renting your own cards and buying your own airplane tickets. Otherwise, you ain't gonna make your next event. Number 6, the lack of healthcare. Before WrestleMania 35, comedian John Oliver made a whole segment about how WWE doesn't have any kind of healthcare and how that was frankly ridiculous. It's an area all fans have become accustomed to over the years, but shining a light on it this way did open a lot of people's eyes because again, most assumed this would be the case. I know this as all my non-wrestling fans messaged me asking if this video was accurate. When I told them what it was, they replied saying, "F me." Oliver's aim to get people to boycott WWE didn't work, but it did put quite an important subject back into the mainstream, even if that chatter had died down within a week. Was no real backlash, no protesting at Mania, just a big reaction on the internet before it all went back to normal. It's no real surprise given how long this has been the way. You either accept it and have been shrugging your shoulders for many years now, or you just don't care enough. Once again, it may take other companies to twist WWE's arm into making this a thing, and what a lovely world it would be if we ever got there. Not only could we feel safer when a wrestler is in the ring, but those who aren't affiliated with the sport won't think that we're barbaric for not protecting those who give us so much. Number 5, it is real. If you're any kind of wrestling fan, at some point you will have helpfully been told that it's fake. Apparently the only reason anyone could possibly watch this junk is that they somehow missed the memo about the truth behind the scenes. Forget how unlikely that is, it still happens all the time. What makes it worse is that it's not true. While the finish is a work, there's plenty of reality in wrestling as anybody who watches it knows. Be that the feeling of hurling yourself into a mat canvas or the numerous tragedies that have struck struck the industry throughout the years, to dismiss this as fake nonsense is grossly missing the point and rather insulting. But it's never going to change because of this idea that as we all have a chat in the back beforehand, the whole thing is hogwash and not worth anybody's time. That's not only offensive to the performer themselves, but also to those that watch it. They're saying we're dumb, people. Ignorance isn't always bliss. Really, if they took 5 minutes to educate themselves about pro wrestling, they'd likely change their minds, but if they do that, they can't yell at you and tell you you're nothing but a child. To get back at them though, just find something they like and throw it back in their face. Football, for example. That's just 22 people running around a pitch trying to put a piece of leather into a goal. What a pile of crap. Number 4, Eric Bischoff is a relic. When Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff were announced in their new roles in the summer of 2019, the wrestling community wasn't sure what to think. Heyman got a free pass pretty quickly because he was already involved behind the scenes, but Bischoff, no one got that, mostly because he hadn't been doing anything in wrestling for over 5 years and had openly admitted that he hasn't kept up with the product. Nor did he have to, but it didn't help his case or new job. Clearly it was only fans that were bothered by this, as WWE stock rose as this news filtered out, which proved the shareholders were more than happy with this move and decided it was best for business. To be honest too, when this video is being recorded, we really don't know which way it's going to go or even how involved Eric is going to be in the creative side of things. If it does not go well, you can bet your ass these people won't be behind the move anymore. It's all about the bottom line, and really, that's what Paul and Bischoff have been brought in to do. Increase ratings, which of course then increases finances. Let's hope that we are wrong and Bischoff can ignite a fire under WWE because it certainly needs it, although he was on that Raw reunion nonsense, and that wasn't the best start. Number 3, the pure emotions. If you told someone who didn't watch wrestling that you cried when Ric Flair retired at WrestleMania 34, you'd be looked at like you just slapped their mother. We've already gone over the whole fake thing, but to take that a step further and try to show how it can spark real emotions is never going to get through. How could it? This is a form of entertainment that many of us do love, but at one point or another have kept quiet about it for fear of aggressive reprisals. Nothing else creates vitriol quite like saying you enjoy pro wrestling. For those that have been on one of these roller coaster rides though, you already know. You know how you can be devastated when your favorite wrestler loses, how you bleed when they bleed, hurt when they hurt. It may not make much sense, but what does? Look at life, it's nuts. With wrestling, however, you do build up long-term connections with these guys, right back to the Nature Boy batting alongside the Four Horsemen or tangling with Ricky Steamboat. It means something, and it forces you to buy in. It's such a shame that other people refuse to see that. Number 2, the rock and roll lifestyle. When it comes to rock and roll, that was so lavish it even had a term named after it. If you were in a band and did a bunch of drugs, people just shrugged their shoulders because that was par for the course. It just happened after you'd played a gig. As we know, the ties between rock and roll and wrestling are quite strong, especially in regards to the first WrestleMania. Without this symbiotic relationship, who even knows where WWE would be today? With that in mind, it doesn't sound too nuts that the same level of excess would exist in wrestling too, but because of how it's portrayed, the opposite is true. The legit sport concept mixed with a child-appropriate presentation means drink and drugs aren't too often linked from an outsider point of view, and while it's far better today of course, this wasn't always the truth. I mean, imagine what parents would have thought if they knew when watching SummerSlam 1991 that their great British hero was off his face on crack. Help me, Mr. Hitman. I don't think they would have felt too good about it, but if you transpose Guns N' Roses into that scenario, the reactions would be wildly different. It certainly works for WWE that less people talk about this, but once you do reveal the curtain, it is quite a surprise. It's one of the small reasons that many people couldn't get their head around the Chris Benoit tragedies. It all just seemed to come out of left field. Number 1, everyone knows it's been fake forever. As much as everyone involved in wrestling has tried to defend its honor, the vast majority of those interested in it have been well aware what's been going on since day one. As far back as 1921, sports journalists were being told not to cover the fake nonsense, and when Polish promoter Jack Pfeiffer tried to discredit his rivals by exposing their fakery in 1933, he did so with the assistance of New York's Daily Mirror journalist Dan Parker, a man who for years had prefaced any mention of the sport by making a dig about how stupid it was. Even in the 50s, when Groucho Marx said he had seen wrestlers rehearsing, there was no public outcry. The idea of keeping kayfabe alive was more about maintaining the illusion as opposed to just get people to straight up think it was real. And yet we've gone over the fake argument more than once, and believe you me, we will do so for many years to come. If you're on the outside and don't want to get into wrestling, it's fake crap, and unfortunately, that's the way it will always be. More fool them though, because they will never understand. Know of anything else that non-wrestling fans don't believe about wrestling? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture, and I will talk to you again soon.